Welcome to Youth Ministry Unscripted, the Rooted Youth Ministry podcast. I'm your host, Danny Kwan, and I'm here with my two brothers, our co-hosts, Isaiah and Josh. Could you guys say hi?
Hey, praise the Lord. How y'all doing?
All right. And today, as this podcast is going to appear when we're coming back to school, we're going to talk about this subject of the summer high. And we're not talking about marijuana, but we're talking about the spiritual high that students kind of experience over the summer. And I'm going to ask Josh and Isaiah, or Isaiah and Josh, what do you think of when you hear of this idea of the summer high, and how do you recognize it, and what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I just came back a couple of days ago from a mission trip with about 20 of our high school students to Romania, and it was a fantastic experience. I think our students were able to be effective in coming alongside a wonderful local church that's a church plant there, help them do some outreach and evangelism. And so I think for our students, that kind of experience is so unique. It broadens your view of what God is doing in the world. It makes you feel closer to the Lord. There are elements in which you do a mission trip and you're kind of daily depending on the Lord in a way that you're just not in your normal day. We should be daily depending on the Lord, right? But in a mission trip context, sometimes the things that you're doing are so dependent on God's work in such an obvious way that you find yourself being daily dependent on the Lord more frequently. And I think that leads to the summer high, the high off a youth trip. And then I think that often there's sort of a crash after a mission trip, right? You come home, things aren't the same, and then the way that you perceive believers to be trusting in the Lord there, you come back to your own church, it seems like we're just kind of set in our ways and we're not worshiping as vibrantly or however they experience it, and you just feel like nobody else gets it. Nobody gets it. So I think there's a high, but I almost feel like the crash comes almost immediately afterwards or within a short period. So yeah, we definitely have experienced that even recently.
Yeah.
When I think about the summer high, I think about those years back in college when I myself experienced like the camps and the retreats, engaging in like campus ministries, but then also serving at campus, like camps and different retreats for young people, where we will go and we will sort of minimize the distractions, and it becomes very like experiential, very emotive even, and you experience these things where you are in community with others, and you like heavy worship and all these things. And just to Josh's point, but then when it's over, there's a sense of sadness.
Yeah.
And you go back and it's like, man, I really want to experience what I experienced at that retreat or that camp, but I just don't experience that here.
Yeah.
And so, that's my experience with it in terms of like engaging it myself and also with young people.
Yeah. And one of my stories I remember is, I've been to a lot of short-term mission trips, and I remember this one student years ago saying, I can't wait to go back to missions next summer. And she's like, I can't wait to go back. I miss it so much. Mm-hmm. And it was great, but also I was concerned. I'm like, well, what about now? Mm-hmm. What about your daily life? And she was so only looking forward to going back, but I was kind of talking to her about her daily life, and it really made me think about how do we do youth ministry that is great in the summer, but also year round. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, for all three of us, what are some positives? Again, there can be some positives to it, like I think Josh was kind of alluding to it, but positives and negatives to the summer high. Like, again, we can't just demonize like summer missions or summer camps, and they're all bad. We should stop doing them. And so there's some positives to it, but what are some positives and negatives to these things?
I think a huge positive is that relational dynamic that specifically, like when you talk about missions trips or camps, that relational dynamic where young people just get to know each other more deeply. And I think also when I mention it minimizes the distractions. I mean, yeah, there's distractions. They're young people, but that just getting them in a space where their hearts are open to experience the Lord. And I know I've met young people who dreaded going to a camp over the summer, but then at the end of it, they don't want to leave because of the experience with the Lord that they had. I think that's a great positive for that, is that a lot of times young people get to experience him in ways that maybe they don't back at home.
Yeah. I think the positives are the things that get you to that high are almost always good things, right? Like the reason that we feel when we're at a camp or a retreat or a mission trip, often, well, there's some of it that just is built in, right? Like part of the reason that like the last night of camp is a sob fest is because everybody's exhausted. I mean, that's part of it, right? Everybody's in an extra vulnerable position by the end of the week. But at the same time, like our students sometimes have spent, several days consecutively spending some very intense time in God's word and in prayer on mission trips. Like I said earlier, they're living in daily dependence on God. They're looking for him to work and move. They're sharing their faith with people. So we're doing all these things. What I try to tell students at the end of those weeks is like, the things that you've been doing on this trip are things that you can and should be doing every day of your life. We're just doing them in a more intense way, and we're maybe seeing that in a unique way. And I think that's all positive. Another one would be sometimes when you go to a camp, especially if it's one that you don't run, or on a mission trip, you get to experience worship in a way that might be different than what you do on a normal Sunday. So like our church, this is not in any way to say this as a negative, but our church, I would say, is in a medium income. We have natural lighting in our church. We're pretty hymns based. We're kind of a good cross between contemporary and traditional. But there's not like 90% of the hands are not raised at our church during the musical portion, which is fine. Our people worship, and you can see it on their faces. I'm one of the worship leaders at our church. I get to see it, but it's not as expressive as some congregations. And so going to a different experience where the music is piped a little louder, there's a little bit, there's a little bit of stuff there that might keep students from being as hindered in the way that they worship. It might free them up to be a little more expressive in their worship. And just the difference could be a positive thing just for them being able to worship the Lord with that kind of sense of freedom. They can come back and still have the freedom to do that at our church. They're not, but they might be a little more self-conscious coming back, and they might think that was a really great experience. That's positive. And I think the negative would just be if you come away thinking this is the only way that I can feel close to the Lord. For me, that's the downside, is if they come away and they really think like you were talking about, Danny, the only time when I can feel this way is when I'm away from my home or I'm away from my church and I'm out in this way. Yeah.
Rooted Ministry is excited to partner with PNR Publishing to announce our newest book, Body Image, Valuing God's Good Gift by Andrea Lee, written specifically for young women. This book is part of the 31-day devotionals for teenagers series, which includes titles for both boys and girls. In our sin-torn world, even God's good gifts, like our bodies, come with major challenges. Whether teenage girls are struggling with shame, wrestling with questions about diet and exercise, or simply wondering what it means to live a God-honoring life in a female body, the Bible is filled with beautiful truth to help and encourage them. Andrea Lee writes as one who understands the pain of body image struggles. With warmth and transparency, she points young women to the deep hope of the gospel. 2-page devotional readings, accompanied by prayers and reflection questions, will help students appreciate God's amazing design for their bodies as part of his good creation.
Again, I think for our listeners and for the three of us, the positives and negatives are just a part of youth ministry. I think camps and mission trips are really important. So because there are some negatives, we all agree probably that, we're not going to throw out all mission trips and all summer camps and, all these opportunities. I think they are really important and just, and so like by the time this podcast airs, most of the youth groups are going to be wrapping up or finish their summer camps and mission trips. And so in that first month back, what are some things that youth leaders and youth groups can do to begin to lessen the negative impacts of the summer high? Are there follow-ups or post-mission trip or post-camp things we can do, or some kind of counseling, or just talking to students? Do you guys have any? I know for our youth group, when we do a mission trip, we have 2 post-mission trip kind of follow-up meetings as part of our mission trip process. We have preparation meetings, daily meetings on the field, and then at least 2 post-mission trip meetings that kind of prepare the kids for, getting back into their normal lives and talking about normal living and spiritual life, in their normal daily routines. But is there anything, in the first month back from a camp or mission trip or from leading somewhere that you guys have any thoughts for youth workers?
Yeah, I think that reflection time is very important. One, because you can ask those pointed questions.
Yeah.
So like when you're engaging, you're hearing about experiences, and then you start noticing some of those negative things that's coming up, sort of like, I experienced this at the retreat or at the mission trip, but I don't experience that here. Then you can start engaging in those with the young people, and through that discussion, some things could be revealed as to how we can best transition young people from that summer high into our regular programming, and ensure. Now we don't want to. We have to be careful, because we don't want to create programming so that young people can experience certain things. You know what I mean? Like or like those emotional or experiential things that they experience over there. We don't want to try to replicate that, maybe in some sense, but we just want to be careful with that. But I think having that discussion allows us to hear their hearts and to kind of help transition them from that summer high to their regular programming in a more effective way.
Yeah.
Good.
I think there's a skill that youth ministry folks can develop that helps you to adequately debrief these kinds of experiences. And I think one of the advantages of like a longevity in a ministry context is you can kind of take the temperature of your students without having to ask too many questions. You can kind of read what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that is helpful is to manage expectations. So at the end of a camp, it's typically a thing where at the end of a camp or a retreat or a mission trip, I will try to give some encouragements to what to expect coming out of this. So at the end of my Romania trip, I tried to explain to kids, like, you're going to get home and you're going to try to tell everybody what's happened, and they're going to smile and they're going to nod and they're going to be encouraging, but they're not going to respond with the level of enthusiasm that you expect them to. Yeah. And you need to know that that's okay. And those people don't, like, they're not walking with the Lord or something. Like, they love Jesus too. They just haven't been where you've been. They're not going to get it, and that's okay. So that's one side, is just managing expectations and helping them see, as I said earlier, that like the reason in some ways that they feel the way they're feeling is because they've just been engaging in the same means of grace that have always been available to them. And they've just done it in a more intense way. And so if they want to ride this feeling, quote unquote, like the best way to experience more of that is to just continue to be in the Word, to continue to be in prayer, to continue to share your faith with others, to continue walking daily dependence on the Lord, and that will help. So those are helpful. And then I think also having a next steps for something like when you see that something unique has happened, asking them what they think next steps are. So like I did have some young ladies from our group who were so struck with this mission trip that they really were trying to brainstorm ways that they could be involved in local mission stuff in our city, which I thought was very helpful. And I don't have the time to create like Isaiah said, to create an entire new ministry that gives them an outlet for that. But there are plenty of things going on in our city that would that students could be funneled to, that wouldn't create extra work for me, but that I could help students get connected with so that they could continue to serve the Lord in that way. So I think that's it. Manage expectations and then provide opportunities to take next steps in whatever is going on. I think those are both helpful.
As you said, Josh, before, I think one of the most important words that you mentioned was that sense of freedom that young people feel when they have these mountaintop experiences. And so how, to your point, being in the Word and like really being intentional about prayer, being in community with others, walking with the Lord, growing our dependency on Him, which gives them a sense of freedom in a lot of ways, because the Lord is working in their hearts and moving them to a sense of freedom that they can experience in Him. And I think that's essentially what we want young people to experience when we, whether we are on retreats, mission trips, or we are in the classroom at the church, engaging in the text.
Yeah. This is our podcast called Youth Ministry Unscripted. So I have a question for you both that I did not script.
All right.
So my youth group was a little larger, but we did a lot of mission trips in the summer, and sometimes post mission trip, or even kids who went to camp and some kids who didn't. Sometimes like cliques would form, or if you went to the mission trip, like that was their experience, but the kids who didn't go, they didn't have that experience, and some kids might feel left out. And how do you assimilate kids back together? And the kids who did go and didn't, and some who are on the spiritual eye, and kids who aren't. Or any of you guys' thoughts? This is unscripted, so yeah.
I think for mine, I think it's been relatively low drama.
Okay.
I don't think that we've maybe had as much going on as what you're describing there, to where there would be like kind of rival groups. I do think that there is a thing where students who go on some of these trips will sort of become friends kind of unexpectedly. I think there's definitely like been a lot of experiences where we have like kind of a hodgepodge group of kids wind up going on a trip. It's not just like some cohesive friend group that all sign up together. It's like kind of a random sampling of students, and then somehow they all come out really big buddies about it. And then when they get back, they kind of click together like that. They kind of have their little group. So we've definitely seen a little bit of that.
Yeah.
The drama on my side, I think, has been trying to get some kids to engage in the culture in ways that might be unpolite if they don't. Like you need to eat the food. You need to, show the common courtesy. You need to not be an obnoxious American on the metro train going through the place. That's kind of the places where we see where I have to get on to the kids. Yeah.
I haven't experienced that drama piece either, but I think there's a very real sense of when you take a group of young people, whatever that experience is, whether it's a camp, whether it's a mission trip, and you come back, and that dynamic between those who attended and then those who didn't, I think it'd be a little like navigating that.
Yeah.
It says that some kids that didn't get to go feel left out, and it's like, how do you how do you navigate that space?
Yeah.
And I could never really figure that out, because it's like, I don't want them to minimize their experience because, these other kids couldn't go. But at the same time, you never want other kids to feel left out, and, that FOMO, as they call it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I think it's just something we have to be sensitive to. If kids, there is a beauty of, like Josh said, kids becoming friends that you never thought would be. But again, as Isaiah said, when kids come back and the kids who didn't go, and how do you kind of bridge that dynamic?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Kwame, and I have been serving in youth ministry at Centennial Church in Forest Lake, Minnesota for more than 20 years. I'm also the author of More to the Story, Deep Answers to Real Questions on Attraction, Identity, and Relationships. And I've had the honor to write Rooted's new curriculum on biblical sexuality. It's a 9-week short study that goes through key passages in Scripture about the topic of human sexuality. And our hope and prayer with it is that it would help students to see why their sexuality matters so much and how they can honor God with their bodies and their relationships. We also hope and pray that it is a tool for you as you navigate the tough questions that our students are asking with gospel truth.
We're kind of getting into this idea of, programming, doing ministry in the summer versus then now in the fall and winter, and thinking about doing ministry throughout the year versus just the summer high, and how to transition well in the, from the summer to the fall and winter. I know, Isaiah, at a Rooted conference, you talked a little bit about your heart for kind of urban local missions versus just going far away from missions. And again, this is unscripted, but I remember how good your workshop was. Kind of your heart was for kind of a year-round view of missions, wasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Because, when I think about missions, I think about being the ongoing mission of God, and for me personally, I feel like one of the most effective ways to do that is to partner with local organizations around where you live, so that you can consistently build relationships with that community, and, meet needs wherever those needs are. And so, and then it comes from my own experience growing up. And so that's where my heart is. And that's one of the things that I tried to foster within the student ministry that I served in.
Yeah. And, like I know Josh, Josh, you just came from overseas, but, even for us, we try to keep year-round partnerships with our overseas missionaries, or we've also partnered with a local urban ministry, and we try to do things with them throughout the year. But is there ways that you guys think about ministry that not only in the summer, but how can you keep, not just be a summer high, but keep and transition well into the rhythms of the winter? Maybe kids who are super excited in the summer after a mission trip, get them involved, or, it's a springboard to the fall small groups or something like that. Like, how do you continue from summer to the fall as far as ministry and your students, and how might you use it as a springboard?
I think a big thing would be if I'm communicating to them that a part of the reason that they're feeling the way that they're feeling is that they're actually engaging in the means of grace that have always been available to them. Then I would also be explaining how we're providing ways for them to express those things and engage in those same means of grace throughout the year. It might be a more of a slow, steady form of that. But if they're really amped up about the relational, community-based part, well, we have small groups, and those small groups meet every week. You're not living with each other like you are at camp, but you're with one another every day. If worship is it, well, we have worship several times a week that you can engage in worship. You can come and worship the Lord. We're encouraging them to be in the Word and in prayer. So I think that's kind of the direction that I would go is just kind of messaging to them that the reason that they feel the way they feel is because they're doing these things, and they can do that all the time. And here are the ways that we offer that they can engage in that.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Good. So we want to close with a little bit of, since we're talking about summer and summer ministry, is there like one or two, or just maybe one? We have all been in youth ministry a long time, but can you recall one memorable summer ministry memory out of all the ministry that you've done in your lifetimes? A mission trip or summer camp or some crazy story or some beautiful story?
I think, man, I've got a bunch. We could do a whole episode just sharing the stories, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I'll share two quick ones. One is, I remember one particular year that I took a small group of high school students to Eastern Europe, not Romania, but a different country, and we did some work with people there. And I think for that small group, we had our debrief at the end, and they were all just very struck with the way the Lord was able to use them individually. And I think we had some students that were very down on themselves and really didn't think that they could be useful, or maybe weren't receiving a lot of affirmation in their life. And I think that was really an opening thing for them. So I think that was a really unique trip where most of the students on that were really positively impacted in a huge way. And then last summer we started doing our own summer camp. So instead of just showing up at some program thing that we don't have anything to do with, we've been doing our own. And our senior pastor came to it, and he stayed the whole week with us. And he wasn't the speaker or anything like that. He just kind of came and hung out, which was really great. I mean, if you're a senior pastor and listening, any way that you can just let your kids in the youth group know that you love and support them, even if it's just kind of being a fly on the wall every once in a while, is really helpful. But one memorable thing was that we had a camp out night where people slept outside. We kind of had a big bonfire, and the kids kind of did it. We didn't have music or anything, but they were doing a dance circle and just kind of clapping and stuff. And he got in the middle of it, and it was only about 5 seconds, but he did busted a couple of moves in there. And I think that just made the kids think, man, our pastor loves us. He's getting goofy with us. I thought that was really, really special.
Yeah. Whenever I think about, opportunities or events and camps, and man, my heart is in my prayers, man, how, Lord, I want these young people to experience more of you and your love and grow to love you more. And, one of the most memorable things that we've done is when we partnered with another church, and we did what we called a bus ride to justice, and we went through Alabama and Birmingham and Montgomery and Selma and Tuskegee. And we just the experience, but one of the lens that we wanted the young people to think through, because it was a lot of heavy stuff, as you could imagine. And one of the things that we will often ask them is, where do you see the Lord working? Because the Lord is always working. And so even in the midst of the tragedy, the hard things that we discuss, in those discussions amongst those young people, to kind of hear where they see the Lord working, and just the community and the life that happens within that, even in the midst of the hard stuff. Now there was fun stuff, but at the end of the day, seeing them grow together, loving the Lord with all their heart, mind, and soul, and then loving their neighbors, loving each other.
Beautiful.
So for me, those are the most memorable. one of that experience was the most memorable for me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, for me, when we go to do missions, we try to really promote long-term systemic change. And out of all the memories of missions, 2004, we went to Africa, and this missionary wanted to start a school. And she just told us that to start a school, we had to build a school. And to start building a school, you have to just claim the land in this remote area. And so our first year we were there, we just had to dig up the land and build the fences and claim the land for her. And we just spent days building the fence and the foundation. And man, it was a lot of hard work, gathering the water from the river, putting the fence poles in, and we go back, every other year. And but our picture from 2004 is still up on the school wall. Like, we built the school, like we're just a small youth group, and I'm not small, but we're just a youth group of kids. But and we didn't, we had the workers there from the area, but they somehow put our picture there, and it's just really touching. But
That's awesome.
anyway, it's just a good summer memory. Yeah, I mean, thanks guys for just talking about this issue of summer highs. And it's an experience that we all go through as youth workers and how we deal with it. So I hope it was helpful. And for our listeners, and please subscribe to the Youth Ministry Unfiltered on all the places you get your podcast. And may we embrace the hope and joy of the gospel and believe that it's true, powerful, and transformative. Thanks for listening to Youth Ministry Unscripted, the Rooted Youth Ministry podcast. Thank you.